Welcome to this week's episode of the And Both podcast. What does it mean to be a secure, trusted adult in someone else's kids' lives when those kids decide you're more than just dad's partner? My guest today is Caroline Benefield, digital marketer, step-parent, and someone who lived a decade of life in 18 months. Between January 2022 and June 2023, she got engaged, bought a house, moved in with her fiancé and his two kids, lost both parents, managed two estates, canceled her wedding, got married on her back porch, and started a business. In this episode, we're talking about what it really looks like to be the third parent in a blended family, not the replacement, not the villain, but the person who shows up with intention, sets boundaries, and lets trust build slowly. We're also talking about grief, career pivots, when your dream job isn't, and what happens when a 6-year-old hands you your homework and says, "You're basically my parent, just sign it." Without further ado, here's Caroline. Welcome to And Both, a podcast about what it really looks like to put yourself on the list while raising kids and doing all the other things life asks of you. I'm your host, Ashley Blackington, and on this show, you'll hear conversations with moms who are figuring it out in their own ways, plus a few solo episodes from me from time to time. It's not about having all the answers, it's about sharing stories, learning from each other, and knowing we don't have to choose between either or when we're living in the middle of And Both. Let's get into today's episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the And Both podcast. I am here today with Caroline Benefield. Welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited too. How about you start off letting people know what you'd like them to know about you, please?
Yeah, so like Ashley said, I'm Caroline Benefield. I am a wife, a stepmom. I am an avid collector of all of the grandma hobbies and fiber arts hobbies in the world. I have had a stint as a romance author, and now I run a freelance digital marketing agency for creatives, entrepreneurs. I work mostly with moms and women.
Very cool. Very cool. I mean, it sounds like creativity is not a stretch in any way, shape, or form. What was your first fiber art intro medium?
Yeah, so my mom was an avid needlepointer when I was growing up, and I thought everything she made was just the most beautiful stuff in the world. And so I asked her if I could learn, and I did a couple of projects. I didn't quite have the patience at, 7, 8 years old so she finished a lot of them for me. And then I tried knitting. I could never get the hang of it. And eventually in my early 20s, I was working in Midtown Atlanta. I was taking the train and the bus into work every day, which if you are from Atlanta, you probably know takes a very long time. We don't have great public transportation, but it was cheaper than parking in Midtown. So I stopped at Michael's one day and picked up a crochet hook and a ball of the cheapest yarn I could and started learning to crochet. And then from there, it has just snowballed. And now I still needlepoint. I did finally get the hang of knitting. And I'm taking my first beginner embroidery class tonight. And my mother-in-law has promised to teach me how to sew and gave me a very old but very well-made sewing machine. So that's in my future as well.
I love it. My grandmother was one of those people. I say that my grandmother was the Canadian Martha Stewart if she had been discovered. I watched the Martha Stewart documentary with my husband, came out, minus the insider trading thing. That was not her jam. But I was like, this woman is my grandmother. She she was one of those people that she made all of the curtains in their house. She refinished the furniture. She everything, but perfect. The piping around the cushions on the chairs perfectly matched the stripes on the cushion.
That is a level of craft that is so aspirational.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's one of those things where it was like, oh my gosh, when you're a kid. So my brother and I, she did this, I don't know how many of the grandkids she did this for. She made a whole wardrobe for our teddy bears. So she could knit an adult size sweater, full sweater in 24 hours. She was just one of those, it was insane. And so she made we had jeans, wool sweaters, pajamas, all that stuff. She could make a pair of jeans that looked like it came from a store. And I have a lot of sadness about the fact that I never learned how to do any of that stuff from her. and double down on that, she ended up with cataracts, glaucoma, and macular degeneration later in life. And so like all of these things that she wanted to be able to do, she couldn't do because she couldn't see. And it's like so much talent and wisdom and skill just like ended there.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's hard. It is so hard and so time consuming.
Yes. And it gives you so much appreciation for how much work goes into those crafts and how much we're losing that
Hmm.
today. And I love seeing this resurgence of millennials and Gen Z trying to learn these crafts and
Hmm.
make sure that they don't die off as both hobbies and as, means of production.
Yeah. Yeah. When we bought our house, this was many, many years ago. The house had like the bamboo curtains that the people that we bought it from had. And, it gets to be like dusk. And now all of a sudden you're in a fishbowl and you're like, hi, everyone. And I was like, oh, I'll just go and get curtains. And I went to the store. If anyone on planet Earth has ever bought curtains, you know that it is astronomical
Mhm.
for curtains. And I was like, this is fabric that hangs from the wall. Like, what are we doing here? Went and bought a sewing machine. I was like 30 in my early 30s and was like, okay, sewing machine, how do we do this? And I had no idea. So like even, it's like I love seeing the resurgence of those things, but it also makes me so sad is like the people who had all that skill, there's like one generation too many in between. So now it's going to be this whole like everyone's got to learn it again
Yeah.
versus that, which is it's too bad. But I think it's, to your point, like it's really, really cool. And it's catching on. Levi's just announced a program where they help. I think they're teaching people how to repair jeans. And, and there's some crazy statistics about how we have enough clothing on this planet to clothe like generations of people, but we just keep buying and throwing things away.
Yep. Yep.
It's
It
nuts.
gives you a whole new appreciation for slow fashion and what really
Mhm.
goes into making a garment or a pair of curtains or we have a great flea market around the corner from our house, and my husband jokes that I have become a rescuer of hand embroidery. If I find napkins, table runners, I can't just let them sit there. Somebody put
Mhm.
hours of work and love into these, and they have to come to my house and have a home.
Yeah. There's a woman online, I can't remember her account, but I'll look it up, and she takes vintage tablecloths and turns them
Yes.
into dresses.
Poppy Lou, I think. I
Yes.
follow her,
Yes.
yes.
It's like it's unbelievable. There's always people like in the comments who are like, "You're destroying someone's handmade thing, blah blah blah." And it's like, well, it's gonna sit in a drawer or someone's gonna wear it and people are gonna be like, wow, that is gorgeous,
Yeah.
yada yada. Like, what would you rather have happen?
Mhm. I got inspired by her actually and found at the flea market this gorgeous hand-stitched, quilt topper that wasn't finished, and it turns out it's the owner of the flea market's grandmother never got to finish it, and I am planning to turn it into, like, a big swingy circle maxi skirt, like, very boho. I have a couple of warm weather trips coming up, and I'm very excited to give that a try once I can get my mother-in-law here to supervise.
Right? Maybe not the first thing you want to sew when you're learning how, but that's really cool. Moving into I mean, I could talk about this stuff all for hours and hours. It's crazy. Your digital marketing, how did you get into that and how did you get into you said you work mostly with like moms and entrepreneurs. Like how did you funnel down to that space?
Yeah, so I spent the first almost decade of my career in nonprofit communications and development. So everything from newsletters to grant writing to direct mail. I very much became a communications generalist.
Mhm.
And then I moved into the higher education space. I led direct response marketing at a tier one research institution for about 5 years. And I had no designs on being an entrepreneur. I was very happy being a cog in a big machine. And then between January of 2022 and June of 2023, I lived about a decade of life in 18 months. So, January 2nd of 2022, I got engaged to my now husband. In March, I sold my condo. We bought our house. I started living 50% of the time with his kids, who I knew and already loved, but I really transitioned into a parental role. And then I took on executive director level responsibilities at my job. Then in August of 2022, I lost my dad. And right when I climbed out of that grief hole, I was trying to plan my wedding and all of these things and manage all of my extra responsibilities at work. I ended up on every task force under the sun. And then in June of 2023, my mom died. And my parents were divorced. They lived both an hour outside of Atlanta in opposite directions. I'm an only child. Suddenly, I have two estates to manage. I have a lot of distance to cover in the state to manage all of this. My husband and I canceled our wedding. We got married on our back porch. His best friend officiated for us. And I took FMLA from work to try to deal with everything. And during that time, kind of going back to the creativity discussion, I got the opportunity to write completely unrelated from anything that I had done before. The opportunity to write a paranormal romance series, very small town, very cozy. It's written under a pen name. I decided to take that opportunity and take a step back from my big girl corporate career. I thought I was going to live that, soft life creative aesthetic. And when you asked me if I was a kid what my dream job would have been, it would have been an author. I was an avid reader. I still am. And during that time, I started working with a lot of authors, in particular on email marketing and demystifying that process, telling them how to set up emails that would be compliant, deliverable, how to actually attract subscribers to their newsletters. And from there, I started getting people requesting consultations. And I decided, okay, I should put together a fee sheet. I should, have all of my ducks in a row with this. And last year, I ended up with enough requests and businesses to spin this off as its own LLC. Around that same time, I wrapped up this book series and I had to grapple with what happens when your dream job turns out to not be your dream job.
Mm-hmm.
Writing is a lot of fun, and turning it into my career kind of sucked the soul out of me. I decided to just go all in on the digital marketing business. But when I thought about my past experiences and who I wanted to work with, it really is that person that is at the point in their business where they're saying, I know that I need to do more marketing to scale, and I don't even know where to start, or I know that if I take the time that it's going to take to learn all of this and execute all of this, I'm not going to have the time to do what I want to do. And then when I started niching that audience down even further, I realized that the people who are the shortest on time are women, usually. We're doing everything around the house. We're wiping noses. We are getting, sneezes in our eyeballs, trying to make sure that, all of the kids have something that they're going to eat. And even for, the women I know who don't have kids, they are constantly trying to engage in their communities and give back. And so when I thought about the people who have the least amount of time and, in my opinion, some of the most to give, it is moms and women who are at the point where they're ready to scale their offerings and really show the world outside of their immediate circle what they can do and what they have to offer.
I love that. And I also love that you're saying, like, I mean, even you're a great example of this, right? Is like you have all of this talent and you have all of this experience and you want this to go out, and you have two estates that you have to settle, right? Like your time is gone. I think, what is the average? It's 18 months to settle an estate in this country.
Yep. We are still wrapping up some stuff with my dad's estate. My mom's was very simple, thankfully. And I will go on a quick tirade about this. If you have not spoken with an estate planner for your own stuff, please, please, please do so. They give you all of the ways to set things up where things don't have to go through probate court. And where you can have rights of survivorship for your spouse and all of those things. My mom had set all of that up. So her estate took 9 months to
Mm-hmm.
close. It's been almost 4 years since my dad died, and we are still settling some of the final things with his estate because none of that was set up. He had a will,
Mm-hmm.
but the only thing that had any kinds of rights of survivorship or trust involved was the house that he owned with his long-term girlfriend.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean that it's unbelievable how people sort of assume that like a will just covers all of it. They're
Hmm.
like, but I have a will. And you're like, oh no, you have many different facets of you that have to be addressed. Things have to get passed off like
Hmm.
legally and all of that stuff. It's true.
Yeah.
I just had a guest on who this episode isn't released, but it will be released when this episode releases, who helps people with their digital footprint
Hmm.
and how to effectively navigate what that is, because you have digital information that is here, there, and everywhere. And how do you make sure that that information gets shut down properly so that someone doesn't carry on with that?
Yeah. And for creatives, there is the whole issue, and even beyond creatives, for entrepreneurs, there's all of your IP
Hmm.
to protect. What happens if you pass? Who gets control of your publishing rights? Who gets control of what happens with your books or your art or the courses you have taken the time to develop? All of that can get held up for years in courts if you don't have all of those things in place.
Yeah. Yeah, that's nuts. I love that. I love that you've identified this group of people. How is it going? Like, how do you going from corporate adventure to choose your own adventure? How is it going?
It's been going really well. I have, I think, really identified places to network with my niche. I tried the whole, local chamber thing, and that wasn't necessarily my target market. And so I turned to some online networking groups. Some of them are paid, some of them are free, but I started attending groups that were specifically for moms. I realized that while I love marketing, I do not like doing a lot of marketing for myself. So I decided to pursue word of mouth as my main referral source. I do have a referral program in place that has gotten a lot of leads for me. And at this point, I'm growing rapidly enough that I'm having to set some boundaries around how many intro calls I can take and
Yeah.
all of that. But I am still actively accepting clients. I have fashioned packages that can be everything from full service turnkey. I handle literally every aspect of your digital marketing for you to a la carte services. I have some clients where I just manage their digital ads.
Hmm.
I've had a lot of clients come in through my compliance audit, which is where I take a look at all of your email marketing and your list and your platform and all of your authentications between your domain and your email and make sure that everything is compliant and that your emails are getting delivered. So I do get a lot of clients who come in that way for me.
Hmm.
And I am priced for people who want to start dipping their toe in the water of hiring a marketing professional. So I'm in a privileged position to be able to do that. I am in a dual income household. My husband has a good, steady, stable job. So I am able to price myself for the market I'm trying to attract. So that's been going really, really well.
Yeah. I love when people call that out too, because I think that a lot of times it's like our support system has become our new income in terms of the conversations that we don't have, right? It's like, oh, well, we used to talk, like it used to be the nobody talks about how much money you make. And now, you can, Google all that stuff, but people don't talk about like the supports that they have in place to be able to offer a different price point or whatever it is.
Hmm.
So you navigated like massive things. What is it? What's the top? It's like the top three things, like getting married, moving, and having kids. Like you're not supposed to do those in like a specific time, or like
Yep.
you can do one at a time or whatever. But you just decided to like rip
Let's
not
just
even
do
the
it all.
Band-Aid, the wax strip.
Hmm. the wax strip in incredibly painful places.
Yeah.
hmm
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go full bikini wax with it.
Yeah, right. Here we are. How did that navigation go? Like, parts of your life are overwhelmingly sad, and things are like there's closure, no closure, whatever that is. And then you have parts that are just opening up, like
Mhm.
moving into a new place, and you become a stepmom, and you have like all of that is all good and positive, but it's still a massive shift. Like, how did you navigate that?
A lot of therapy, a lot of therapy.
Love it.
And in particular, I like that you brought up closure because I had two very different experiences with that with my parents. With my dad, he had a decade-long decline in his health. I had been preparing myself. I just turned 34 when he died, and I had been preparing myself since I was 23, 24
Hmm.
for the end of his life. So, and I got to see him the day before he died and say my goodbyes. So I had a lot of closure. He was someone I think who he just needed to hear that there was nothing left that they could do to let go. Whereas my mom, it was very sudden. I couldn't get in touch with her, called in a welfare check on her, and the property manager at her senior living home found her.
Mm.
And that was a much harder hump to get over. Also, very rudely of her, she died the weekend of my first Father's Day without my dad. So
Oh, rude.
I know. My best friend was like, "Do you think that she tried to go to the afterlife to tell your dad off and then realized it was a one-way trip?" And I said, "No, I think that she got sick of everything going on around her and decided to just go in the afterlife to go Thelma and Louise off a cliff with her best friend." Is what I think happened. But, that took me a lot longer. It took me a lot longer to even access the emotions around it. And at the same time, navigating all of this positive stuff, it's still this massive identity shift, right? Like
Mhm.
I went from, and again, my best friend, who I will bring up because she is one of the funniest people in the world and is great at making me laugh when I'm sad. I was talking to her about some of that, and at the same time, our other best friend had her first child 6 months before my mom died, and like 9 months after I had moved in with my husband and his kids. And she likes to say, well, Jackie, our other best friend, she enlisted in motherhood and Caroline got conscripted. On my first date with my husband, he said, I'm not looking for another mom for my kids. My kids have a mom who's very involved and very loving. And I said, great. I am happy to be another safe and stable adult in their lives. And they'd made the decision that that was not how that was going to go, and that I was going to be extra mom. And the way that they talk to people about it is, well, we have two moms and then we have dad. And I'm like, I don't have objections to being married to a woman. Be very open to that. If my husband passed away, I don't think you guys want me and her to be married. I don't think that we would mix well. Uh, as I don't think y'all want a two mom household. I think that would be a lot for both of you. But yeah, having to learn how to navigate all of these highs and all of these lows at the same time, it was like my nervous system couldn't handle all of the feelings, both
Yeah.
the highs and the lows, and it just shut down.
Hmm.
And my therapist was like, okay, let's start figuring out some ways to just gently access emotions. And we started finding ways for me to take a step back and become an observer of the emotion. I remember she would ask me, where do you feel that in your body? And I'd be like, I don't know. And she'd be like, okay, well, how do you know you're sad? I was like, my brain tells me that I'm sad. And she's like, okay, saying I feel it in my brain is an acceptable answer. And that unlocked so much ability for me to talk about my emotions because people would be like, well, like, do you have a stomach ache? Does your throat hurt? And I'd be like, no, my brain says you're sad.
You're like, that's it.
That's how I know that I'm sad is my brain says we're sad or we're angry or we're happy. So getting that kind of permission helped me put names to what I was feeling and then start exploring instead of identifying what I was feeling in my body or how I was observing the world around me and then putting a name on it, I realized I'm someone who needs to put a name on it and then explore it within that container. Yeah. And so lots and lots of therapy. I'm still in therapy. I love my therapist. She is fantastic at what she does. But I remember having to be able to start to access those emotions so I could talk to the girls about them. They were young at the time. They're still young. They're elementary school and just into middle school. So when my mom died, they were in first and third grade.
Mm,
And this was a woman that they had met multiple times. She came and stayed with us. We bought this house partially because part of our basement could be converted to an in-law suite if we needed it. And that was where she stayed when she came and visited. And suddenly this woman that they had met was gone and they were worried about me and they noticed the shift in my ability to interact with them and that I needed a lot more naps and that I was gone a lot more because I was traveling to these cities outside of Atlanta to deal with things. And having to sit down with them and have those conversations of, yeah, I'm really sad and that affects my energy levels. And that means how I play with you might look different for a little while. I might not be able to do as much high energy play, but you know, we can do crafts together. We can do puzzles and being open with them about the fact that I was in therapy and working on it and normalizing that it's okay for grief to not go away, but for it
mm.
to eventually make room for other things in your life has been a really important conversation to navigate with them.
Yeah. I mean, I think the kids, that kids just want to know. They don't need details. They just need the truth, which is
Hmm.
a really, I think that gets lost in the mix is like this idea of we're going to protect. So therefore we pretend versus like these are open conversations that are done at a level where it meets the kids. Hey, it's Ashley. When I started my first business, it felt like I had two options: figure it out on my own or pay a high ticket price for a coach, and there was nothing in between. I was a beginner trying to make smart decisions without burning myself out or my savings, so I built what I wish had existed. This course is 6 clear, practical modules that take you from first decisions to launch and beyond. No fluff, just guidance, structure, and support. And no how bad do you want it or we all have the same 24 hours in the day guilt trips. I created it to help women build lives and businesses on their own terms, not just to sell a course. Listeners can take 20% off with the code NURTURED20. For more information, go to andbothpodcast.com. Let's also just point out the fact that your dad had a long-term illness and did not prepare his estate. Your mom did not and prepared hers. And I just think that that is more the norm than anything. Like in my
Yep.
experience clinically, like people in the hospital come in and they're like, no, I'm not. Like people are coming in who've been in the hospital for years, in and out. Things are like really not good. The news is not good. And you don't have to be a healthcare professional to just have someone come in with a 2-inch chart and say, I don't know if we're gonna be not not walking out of here, but I don't know that we're gonna like undo everything. And like it's not I don't know, it's not like a car wash. You don't like replace parts.
It's interesting. When I was in undergrad, I got the opportunity I was a integrative studies major, but my focus was sociology and
Mm.
specifically medical sociology. And I got the opportunity as a senior to do directed research a with a medical sociologist. And there were two things that we looked at. I helped her with research that she was doing on stage 0 cancer survivors and their
Mm.
perceptions of what survivorship looked like. And her husband had gone in for a colonoscopy, woke up from it, and they said, "You had cancer. Now you don't. Come back in 3 years."
Oh, so
Um,
it's
you
so
know,
abrupt.
I right. So then I started doing, and this was early 2010s, the height of pop psychology, power of positive thinking. I did research on cancer institutions marketing. And it was all based around these cutting edge technologies that could help save your life. And then you start going into the fine print, and it's the average extension of life expectancy is 4 to 8 weeks on most of them. And then with the interviews that I was doing with cancer survivors and with people who had lost loved ones to cancer, more importantly, was it created this environment where medical professionals, a lot of them felt almost afraid to pronounce a patient terminal because it got rid of all of this power of positive thinking, and it sounded like they were giving up on the patient when the patient would come and say, well, there's this and there's this trial, and can I try this? And a lot of medical professionals that I spoke with were having a hard time figuring out when and how to let someone know, no, there's nothing left to do without sounding like they were giving up. And, now we have death doulas, and we have, therapists and social workers that are a part of hospice teams that are, in my experience, my dad being in hospice, were probably the most important part of that team.
Mm-hmm.
And in the early 2010s, we weren't seeing as much of that because people didn't want to admit that it was a hospice situation or even a palliative care situation. And I presented the research at the Georgia Public Health Association conference and did not win any awards, which is fair. I was one of like 3 undergrads there, and everyone else had far more
Robbed.
in-depth.
You're totally robbed.
Thank you. No, actually, the woman next to me who did the poster presentation, hers, I can't even remember hers, but I remember her research being fascinating, and she won. And to be clear, she deserved it. I think it was on food access in rural communities. Fascinating. But it was really interesting research. And then having done all this research, my dad having been alive and listening to me and being so excited for me with all of this research, I was like, so we learned nothing. So we learned nothing from the research that your own child did on all of this. But my mom was ADHD runs in my family, and my mom was one of the boomers who resorted to very tight type A control over her life to manage undiagnosed ADHD, which I understand. It was even when I first got I didn't get diagnosed until almost right before college because it presents so differently in women.
Yeah.
So when I was going through all of her files, I was not surprised. I mean, this woman I had insurance receipts from 2002, and I was like, okay, anything that's more than 10 years old goes in the shredder. But,
back
to
to
her
truck.
credit, it was all incredibly organized.
I love that. I mean,
and that made a big difference in how long her estate took to close.
That's amazing. I think, that's the piece. I have a friend who set up a private practice. She's a physical therapist. And we were talking about, what are some of the things that you're doing? And now, even from the time when I was in school and doing clinical training and internships, where a patient would go on to CMO, like comfort measures only, palliative care, whatever we're calling it, was CMO then. It was sort of like they go on to CMO and everyone leaves. Like there's no PT, there's no OT, there's no speech, there's no nothing. It's like pain medications, comfort measures. Now, with the boom of the end of life industry, which is something that I think we used to do a really good job of a long, long time ago. And then we got so busy being busy that it's like, I literally don't have time to die. And so you go. And then there's a cutoff and all of that. But that now there's so much information and knowledge and research and dedicated time to this end of life period process timeline that she was like, oh, I do physical therapy for people that are on hospice. Just this, like in less than 20 years, the shift from these people don't, like, PT is not allowed in there because it's not going to be covered. It's not indicated for this population, to like, this person has pain and we have someone who is trained and can actually help them go in there and perform stretching, whatever it is, so that person so that can help with pain management is like, it makes me so happy, which is
Mm-hmm.
not what we're supposed to
It's
be talking about when people are dying, but
Yeah, I mean, truly, my dad's hospice team was so wonderful and caring and supportive of me. And he had been with his girlfriend for 16 years at that
hmm
point. And again, going back to death measures, this poor woman who had been with my dad for 16 years. And, I took on some caretaking responsibilities, but she was retired and took on by far the bulk of it.
yeah.
Had to had to rely on me for everything because I was the legal next of kin. So going back to setting everything up, if you are not married to your partner and you don't intend to be, please set them up for success.
Right. And that, I mean, not even too, like just navigating what that relationship is. Like if you and her did not have a good relationship, how does that, I mean, that can go left in
and,
in a millisecond.
and she and I did not have a great relationship.
Mm.
We, especially early in their relationship, she and I had a very, very tense, uncomfortable relationship. Over the last decade of his life, we got to a place where we were pretty cordial. And now we are at the place of kind of like a semi-distant relative that you will send some updates to. Um, you know, we have told her she has to come to Atlanta sometimes for medical procedures. We've told her, we have a suite downstairs if you need somewhere to stay, if you have a couple of days. But we both caused a lot of harm to each
hmm
other in the first 5 or 6 years of her relationship with my dad. The way that they got together didn't sit well with me.
hmm
And I had to do a lot of reckoning in my 30s about who my dad was as a person. And I can say that she and I are people that would never be close friends just from a personality perspective.
Yeah.
And also I can look at everything she did for my dad. And, one of the things I told her when she called me to say he's gone was, you know, I'm really grateful that he had you up until the end and that he had someone there with him all the time because I wouldn't, if he didn't, I wouldn't have been able to provide that level of support without taking FMLA from work and that kind of thing. And, I'm grateful that he knew up until the end that he was loved and had someone there with him all the time. So thank you for loving him.
hmm
So yeah, she and I are at a point now where, we send Christmas cards, we text occasionally. She's planning a trip to Iceland with some of her girlfriends, and I went a couple of years ago with one of mine and I said, okay, you need to go here. This was the best meal that I had in Iceland. I am planning, my dad's life goal was to climb Grand Teton, and he never did. And so she bought out my equity in his house, and I'm using some of that money to train for and plan a trip with a guided expedition to climb up before I'm 40.
Yay.
So, I've reached out to her and said, I'm planning to take his signet ring on a chain up with me. Is there any memento, small memento that you would like me to carry up?
hmm
And we share pictures and she gives me updates on how their dogs are doing and that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was difficult. Had he died 10 years before when we started preparing for it, it would have been a mess. It would have
Yeah.
been an absolute mess. And one of my goals in co-parenting and being a third parent in my kids' lives is to not repeat those generational cycles of,
hmm
I'm trying to be, yes, I parent and, we have the difficult conversations, but I, try to admit things, but I think there's something their mother is better equipped to talk to them about. With their dad, with my husband, I leave the actual punishment to him, unless it is a natural consequence. And then we sit down and we talk about the natural consequence.
hmm
I will say recently, I saw a TikTok about gentle parenting with malicious intent. Um, and it was a guy who said, if you guys keep fighting, I'm going to hit on mom. And the more you fight, the more I'm going to hit on mom. So I jokingly started that with all of the Gen Alpha brain rot things that they
Yeah.
say, 6, 7. It started the first time one of them said skibbity toilet to me, right? And I was like, every time you say a brain rot thing, it makes me feel cringy and weird. So I'm going to hit on dad because that makes you feel cringy and weird. And it works. My husband bought into it. He'll look at them and be like, say a brain rot thing. I want Caroline to hit on me. And they're like, ew, no, gross. Um, so finding those ways to, still enforce natural consequences, but and obviously if there is, hitting or offensive name calling, then I will step in. But in terms of, grounding, taking away electronics, things like that, I leave that to my husband. And I leave communication about the kids and punishments between the two households up to their mom and to my husband, because those are boundaries that, I want them to understand that I'm here. I am a parent. I am the third parent in their lives. And also that, I respect that there was a family dynamic that existed in their lives before I was a part of it. And I am not trying to completely tear that down. I am trying to slot into that dynamic rather
Yeah.
than break it all apart.
Yeah, like you're a addendum, appendix. I don't know what it is. It's like a bump out. Like they have a dynamic and
Mhm.
you are not detracting from any of that dynamic, but also finding a way to be a component of that
Mhm.
in a parent way, in a like you said, like trusted adult way, but not like it sounds like you have some really fabulous boundaries around where things are a no-go, and sticking with that, I think, is really cool. And I really feel like this generation, like our generation as third parents or step parents or whatever the term is, there's so much, like when we were kids, that was when people started getting divorced, right? It's like the floodgates opened and people were like, actually, no, like forever is not your personality. And then all of the terribleness that came with that, it was like a Noah's Ark gone wrong. People are all just pairing up with other people and no one's really having, it's like we just slot a new person in.
Yeah.
And where you've had this experience in your own life of like, is this a good ad? Is this not a good ad? How do we keep this? And like you were older when your dad and, I mean, a little bit older when your dad and his girlfriend got together, but like just knowing and understanding that dynamic and taking that information and putting it to use in your own situation, I feel like that's very, very of our generation of being like, no, I don't have to have something that looks like this because I've already lived through the experience of how it's not done well. And how can I think about this in a way that makes sense for them, for me, and for the parents?
And one of the places I have actually found I'm able to be very supportive to them is I'm a child of divorce.
Hmm.
Their mom and their dad, their parents are still together. Both of them, their grandparents are still married and have been for decades and decades and decades. And so navigating feelings around divorce and what that looks like, I'm the only parent in the dynamic that has experienced it from the point of view of being a child.
Yeah.
So that's been really helpful. And then also something that I have struggled to navigate is the where the bar is for step parents.
Yeah.
Because I talk about things that I think are incredibly normal and people are like, oh, you're such a good stepmom. And I'm like, I feel like I am just barely stepping over the bar here. Like
Hmm.
I always went into dating with the mindset of if I date a man or a woman that already has children, then I need to be prepared for them to be a priority in this person's life. And I need to be prepared to be an active participant in these kids' lives, whether that is as a trusted adult, a kind of fun aunt figure, or as a parent.
Hmm.
So it kind of baffles me that when people talk about, oh, being such a good stepmom, because I feel like I'm just kind of doing the bare minimum. But I am learning a lot of the step parents I had even in my 20s, people who were becoming step parents, it was either you were basically replacing the parent because the other parent is gone,
Mm-hmm.
or it's, with someone who has their kids very infrequently. You are a sometimes step parent and can really be in like the fun aunt or uncle kind of space. And I didn't have a lot of people in my life who were navigating that, 30% to 50% custody range,
Yeah.
where you were actually having to be a hands-on parent. And I'm glad that there are so many more creators out there now talking about blended families and healthy co-parenting and what those dynamics can look like, and rules and boundaries they have in their household. Because when I first started dating my husband, nobody was talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing is like to just say it is the Wild West. And like you get this, I don't know, this like conversation that's like, you're such a good person for
Hmm.
doing this. And it's like, well, I'm not okay.
Yeah. Like, I actively chose this man and his kids.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and I think too, like that, I feel like the what you saw or what you started to see in social media was around these creators that were talking about like when they got married, they proposed to the kid or they asked the kid's permission to marry the parent or whatever. It was some sort of like group conversation where like that stuff went crazy because people were like, "Oh my God, this person is doing it." They're like, "It's such a good thing that they're doing that." And personally,
yeah,
I agree with that a lot because if you're talking about rearranging and changing a family dynamic and changing the family structure and what all that looks like, I think a disservice to children is to just assume that they'll be fine with whatever. If the kid says no, that's a whole conversation. I don't know how that goes, but I mean, I think generally people are pretty close with people if they're asking these questions.
yeah. The same way that, I don't think a proposal should be a complete out of nowhere
Yeah.
shock. I think for kids, when your parent is dating, the idea that they might want to marry this person and are moving towards that should not be a shock. We had gone on family trips together. I was spending the night one night out of the weekends that my husband has them. I was there for the after school days and dinner and all of that. And so they already saw what that dynamic could be like.
Hmm.
And it was just going to be in a different house.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's something that should come as a complete, if your kids are old enough to understand what
Hmm.
a marriage is, then I don't think you proposing to your new partner should be a shock to them. They should know that something like that is possible in the coming months.
Yeah. Yeah. That would have been, I mean, that would have gone a long way for me when I was a kid. That's for sure.
Yeah, would have gone a long way for me too.
Yeah. And also having a little bit more ability to be honest around surveying the situation. Like I would have
Hmm.
been the kid who was like, "Hey, we're thinking about getting married." And I'd be like, "Okay, I don't want to be your priest and I don't want to be doing your pre-wedding like whatever, but like have you guys really considered this and this?"
Hmm.
That would have gone over like a lead balloon. However, I would have appreciated an opportunity to reach in on that. I think the other thing that is amazing in, and I don't know if you guys planned it this way or not, is that you don't live in the house that they lived in when they were married, right? Because you said you guys bought a new house.
Hmm.
I think that's a really hard piece too. It's like if their mom moves to a different house and he's there with the kids and then you move in, that is that like physical, you're legitimately in like your clothes are hanging in the closet where mom's clothes used to hang and you're like your car is parked where mom's car used to be parked. Like I feel like that makes this barrier where even if you're trying not to and you're trying to talk about it, like you're still legitimately physically slotting into that space.
Probably as part of their divorce agreement, they had sold the house, but still it was slotting into the home that had been just theirs and daddy's, right?
Hmm.
We always knew that, to be honest, I love my husband. I hated his house. I had no intentions of moving in there, and I had a 1,300 square foot condo that was not going to really work. So we found a house that we loved, but yeah, even the dynamic of it's the, divorced dad townhouse, which
Yeah.
is kind of what he had. That was their space when it was just them and dad.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important piece of it too. It's even if you're not, and I understand there are people who are not in a position to sell a home and move. And we were buying our house at kind of the height of low interest rates and got very lucky and are very privileged in a lot of ways that we were able to get this house.
Hmm.
But yeah, I didn't want to slot into that dynamic either of like suddenly there's an extra body here in dad's house all the time. And now we go to dad and Caroline's house. It's our other home instead of this woman is invading our space and suddenly she has to have an office where, in part of our playroom. And suddenly,
Yeah.
we go in with a nightmare and there's another person there all the time. And there's new boundaries in a house that didn't
Yeah.
have those boundaries before.
Yeah, then you start to move into like the 90s divorced parent movie where we
Uh-huh.
watched my kids and I watched The Parent Trap the other day, and that's what I've been thinking of the whole time is like, just not be that woman. I think like
Yeah.
that should be the bare minimum, is to just be not that woman. That would be great.
Hmm. Yeah. And as a massive Elaine Hendricks fan, she played that woman so
Yes.
very well. I am just her biggest fan. I love her.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's my job as a stepmom is to be a supportive, loving, and trusted member of their family. I can recognize that I am the third most important adult in their lives. And
Mhm.
that definitely depends on the day. Some days I'm the most important, but usually it's their mom or their dad. They're tweens and becoming
Yep.
tweens, so it changes every day which one of us is the favorite. And
Mhm.
but all that to say, my job is not to come in and reinvent the wheel in their lives. My job is to come in and give them extra support and resources to navigate all of the complications and emotions that come with little bodies and little brains. The youngest was 2 when I went on my first date with her dad. She doesn't know really a life without me.
Mhm.
So yeah, my job is to help them navigate all of that and to be an additional sounding board for them, an additional support and structure in their lives instead of tearing down old structures. There are ones that we've modified, but my job is not to tear down all of the support they already had in place. It's to enhance it.
Yeah. Well, I think also, not to shout it from the rooftops enough, but to definitely like get the bullhorn out, is that it sounds like you've approached this from the position of someone who has done a ton of reflection, has done a ton of like the sort of acknowledgement of self and a ton of therapy, which is the whole point of therapy. And I hope that that gets acknowledged. I don't even know how that would happen, but like I'll acknowledge it here. It's like the reason this is the way it is, and it sounds like things are going well, is because everybody in this situation is a grown up. I mean, the kids aren't, but like, it's like that's the piece of like you're not you're recognizing who you are and what you're comfortable with, and bringing your experience, and also like having support in a way that's independent of that space, so that you can come to it and be like, okay, this is my best value add, this is where I don't want to be a part of, and all of that. And I think that cannot be emphasized enough, and how important that is, especially if you are moving into a situation that involves like another family dynamic or whatever. Even if you're just dating, it's like there's a lot of conversations that happen there.
One of the most important ones to me through our dating experience were being aligned on the timeline about
Mhm.
how long before I meet the kids, how are you going to tell them? What does the process of, meeting your ex-wife look like? And of course, we started dating, and right around the time that I was going to meet the kids, COVID happened, so we got delayed. He had a 1 year rule in place. And I
Mhm.
was very supportive of that. I felt like that made a lot of sense because the girls were so young. And,
Yeah.
it had been a few years since he had gotten divorced, but also when, the oldest was 5, when you're 5, it's half your life.
Mhm.
Half your life your parents have been divorced and suddenly there's a new dynamic. And so we took things very slow and we took the integration process very slow. And the kids didn't. I think 4 or 5 months after I met them, I was helping the older one with her reading and she was like, okay, I need you to sign off that I did it. And I was like, well, get dad to do that. That says a parent. She was like, you're basically my parent. Just the way that only a really sassy 6-year-old can. And I was like, okay, I will sign this. And then I'm going to go to the bathroom and I'm definitely not crying in there.
I'm definitely not crying. This is definitely not the biggest vote of confidence that I could possibly
Yeah.
get from a child.
Yeah.
Oh my
This is
gosh.
fine. Everything's fine. But now it's stuff like for Mother's Day, they go to their teachers and they're like, hey, I need an extra project. I have 2 moms.
Mm.
Or we were at Honors Day for the younger one last week for the fall semester. And I saw her looking at one of her friends and pointing to us and being like, all of my parents are here. So we navigated it slowly with a lot of care. We worked with a couples therapist before the move on what that integration process would look like. And then my husband and I are both in individual therapy. And I think all of that comes together in a way that we're able to have conversations with the kids about our relationship, about, you know, blended family dynamics, and then also what we're feeling in the moment, whether it's related to grief or building a business or, writing books. I was very honest with them because both of them were like, cool, we're going to be authors. And I was like, okay, let's talk about, how much work that is. I
Mhm.
love that for you. Why don't we try it as a hobby?
Yeah, right?
And then the ability to one of the most beautiful moments with my kids has been when they've seen me going all the way back to the beginning of our conversation with the fiber arts. The older one a couple of years ago was like, Caroline, I want you to teach me how to crochet. And I was like, well, your mother is much better at crochet than I am. And she
Mhm.
was like, yeah, but she has a hard time teaching it. And I think she's one of those people where it comes very naturally, which makes it
Yeah.
harder to teach it. But, she asked me to teach her, and then the little one wanted to learn how to do needlepoint. And it's like reliving all of these things that my mom taught me, and now I'm getting to share that with them. And a lot of that is just building that trust and being patient and trusting that that time is going to come where they're going to trust me and want to talk to me. And, now that they're tweens, we're having conversations about all of the things that come with being a tween and period kits and the what is it, the You and Your Body, The Care and Keeping of You is still the book that is going
Oh
around
god.
everywhere. I know. I
Mhm.
know. But, having those kinds of conversations and being the one to lead that in our house, and I won't say too much about that because I don't want to say anything that could be embarrassing for either of them on a
Yeah.
podcast. But the ability to have those conversations, it's not something I ever thought was going to happen in my life because I had decided in my 20s I wasn't going to have biological children for a variety of reasons. And now I get to experience that. And, both of my parents before they passed away got to experience the joy of me being like, you never realize how long a picture book is until you read it with a 5-year-old. And they were like, you don't say, you don't say. And then my mom would send me, we have 2 rules about gifts in our house, and it's no loose glitter and no noise. And so my mom sent me an Amazon list of things she was thinking about getting the girls for Christmas at the end of 2022. And I was like, everything on here either has glitter or makes noise, Mom. And she was like, well, stop ruining my fun.
She's like, listen, you can't like fiber arts and not get into glitter. All right, here it is.
Glitter is the herpes of the craft world, is my opinion on.
I run we have a glitter-free household, and my kids will go over to their friends. One of my girls was over at her friend's house, and she was like, I can only make these here because my mom won't have glitter in the
Yeah.
house.
To all of the other parents there, please stop putting glitter hearts into gift bags at birthday parties. I have been finding glitter hearts on my floor, no matter how much I vacuum, for a year.
Yeah. Oh, it's true.
Please
Yeah.
stop.
I love it. Oh my gosh. I think, you and I talked about before we started this, I don't think I've ever had somebody on the show that has been a stepmom. I've had people that are part of blended families, so they had their own kids and then they had kids together, but I don't think that I've ever had a step-parent on the show. And I am so excited that you were the first. You get to carry the flag and the torch and all that, because I think that you share something that is really amazing about how it could be, not that it's easy to do, but how it could be in ways that things to consider and stuff like that. So I just thank you, because I think it's a hard thing to do, decision, whether you make the decision to not have kids or you date someone and they have kids or whatever, however that happens, but to have both eyes open and both feet planted firmly when you walk into that, and to be able to adjust and have these conversations also shows for your husband to have that mindset and framework as well. So I think that it's wonderful that you came on and shared, and I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on. I think a lot of parenting podcasts and content that I see, focuses very much on biological moms, which I think is wonderful and important. But as someone who did not see a lot of healthy stepmom representation and blended family, co-parenting, divided custody representation, I just want to thank you for being open to having step parents on to talk about these things, because I'm glad that there's a growing space for us to do so, but it's still so small. And I just really appreciate that you are opening up and making that space for step parents.
Well, thank you. Because, there's a lot of different ways that you can become a parent. And, I think that the trusted adult, good human being wanting to do better in the world is where we should focus versus DNA at this point in time. So,
yeah.
Or at this stage in our planet, whatever is happening, just being a good person is so undervalued these days.
For the people out there that are dating people with kids or considering it, to me, that's the starting point is, can you be a safe and secure adult in their lives? Their relationship with you will develop whether they ever call you mom or say, I have another mom or dad or whatever. Kids pick up on a lot more than we realize. And if you're trying to insert yourself right away into that parental role, they're going to pick up on it. And yeah, for me, that's always the starting point is, if I'm going to date someone who has children, am I in a place mentally, physically, emotionally, where I can be a secure and stable adult in their lives?
I love it. And then we also cannot miss the opportunity for you to let people know where they can find you, because alongside parenting young and growing kids, you are doing wonderful things to help out other moms and women. So where can people find you?
So the easiest way to find me and all the work I do is my website, which is www.southerngritdigital.com. It has listings of all of the packages that I offer, ways to book chats with me. I don't have much of a social media presence. So yeah, website is the place to find me and everything that I'm doing.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Ashley. I appreciate it.